Back then, the players were pretty outspoken.
A lot of guys understood that they were in a privileged position, and to justify that morally, you had to do something with it. It's not just being a good citizen and paying your taxes. You have a voice in terms of some of the issues that separate us.
Well, I was born in Lincoln, Georgia, a very small town between Atlanta and Augusta. My mother gave birth to 13 kids, and 3 passed away early, and I was the youngest of all. We were sharecroppers along with our parents until my father passed away when I was 10 years old. So we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina for the following year. That's when I first laid my eyes on a football, and then went back out in the 11th grade and made the team. I think I was 3rd string or 4th string, one of the two. Went back in the 12th grade and I became a starter, but only played half of the time. When I finished school, obviously I had no scholarships, none, 0. So I had signed up to go into the Air Force. And so I was at a service station, one day, washing a car with the gentleman that worked with me. And this gentleman walks up behind me as I was bending down, drying the car off. And he reaches his hand out and says, "How you doing? My name is Eddie McGirt." And he said, "I understand you're a pretty good football player. Nate here tells me you're the best football player in the state." And I said, "Mr. McGirt, Nate is just pulling your leg." So he says, "I'm the new coach at Johnson C. Smith." He says, "I just signed the contract with him. And this is my first scouting commission." He says, "If you can get out of the Air Force commitment, I'd like to have you come to Smith. You'll be my first recruit." And so that's how I ended up going to college, a place I lived 2 blocks from. And so it was a great school and a great opportunity, and I wouldn't change it. If I had the chance to go to any school in the United States, I would start right there, because I think it was part of making me who my parents had been telling me to be, okay?
Pettis Norman will tell you when he was in college, and he became more active in this with the lunch counter protests. That's when I think he became more of an activist on trying to promote integration.
At that time, lunch counters, they were closed venues, okay, as far as African Americans were concerned. You couldn't go in there. Most of these places you couldn't even go inside. And so it was with that notion, North Carolina A&T, which was 85 miles from, and in the same conference, the students started sitting in demonstration. The word got to Charlotte. We said that we have to do the same thing. We have to open it up, because otherwise they are treating us less than human beings. And so we started this at Johnson C. Smith 2 or 3 days later, very quickly after that, in Charlotte. It finally ended. We don't know who helped them make that decision, but that was it. But it was front page news there all during that time.
Back in those days where teams probably weren't scouting the HBCUs, Gil Brandt, who was in charge of the Cowboys scouting department, he made inroads with some of the HBCU schools. He had these kind of like area coaches that were scouts for him. They ended up knowing that Pettis Norman got drafted by the AFL in like 1962 in the 16th round, and he ended up not going there. Gil knew about the guy, so they brought him in as a rookie free agent. While I don't know if, and especially here in Dallas, if everybody thought Texas was part of the South, it was part of the South when it came to the segregation.
You know, Texas was probably more Southern to me than it was Western. It was probably politically a little bit more conservative.
You know, there was a lot of teams when they were traveling, especially into the South, the teams would stay at a hotel the night before. Well, when they came to Dallas, it was very hard for them to find a hotel that would accept the black players on their team.
Blacks couldn't sleep in the hotels and so forth. The Cowboys was kind of like the introductory piece that started this notion, this thinking that we got to change the system here, okay? So they worked to deal with some of the hotels. And when that opened up, we would sleep separately, black and white. I went to Coach Landry first and said, you know, Coach, we do everything together, but we eat together, but we don't sleep together. And I think a team has to be someone that shares the whole atmosphere together. That's when you build strong teams. And he said, I don't disagree with you at all. Let me talk with Tex Ram. And so when we got to training camp out in Thousand Oaks, Tex called me into his office. He says, I want to follow through on what we said. So he said, well, let's do this. I want to start with you and Dave Manders. And so he said, and after we get back, we're going to have this as the rule. Everybody will be assigned by last name. And that really kind of opened the door and the mentality in Dallas, because the Cowboys were saying, we're not going to eat separately, okay? And we're not going to sleep separately. We're a team. And so that's the way basically society ought to be.
Back then, the players all had off-season jobs. And he ended up getting a job at a bank. And he learned the banking business, where he ended up being the first black official at a bank in Dallas.
Pettis encouraged all the players, to open a bank account. He encouraged us to establish credit. He encouraged us to get involved, in the community.
I tried to do whatever I could to help change those kinds of things that society had operated under for such a long time. Blacks not getting loans for businesses, or whatever the case might be. So I made it a point that I met with chambers of commerce and people and churches and so forth to say, you can borrow money. I know it. And so would share that with people. I
became a customer of his at South Oak Cliff Bank, and I had accounts there, and I would talk to him about investments. He encouraged me to get involved civically in Dallas. Someone once suggested that he could run for mayor and probably get elected. That's how involved he was civically.
The council was an at-large system, and all the evidence proved that the African Americans or poor people were not getting the same services that was available to everyone else.
Well, George Allen, he was the only black member of the city council, but he was always, outvoted. And I think things just got to a head where, people wanted to support him. So I know there was a protest in support of George Allen.
I organized the march, and we had right at 2,000 people down there. And I just said, we have got to change our city so that all people, no matter who they are, have an access to a better life in this city, in jobs, in education, and the whole 9 yards. And so it won't change unless we, one, speak to it, ask for change, and then be part of that change, where everybody benefits when that happens. And so that was the centerpiece of that march. The word came up, or the thought came up, that maybe that got me traded to the San Diego Chargers. One day I was at the bank. Coach Landry called me on the phone, and he says, how long will you be there? And I said, well, I'm the only one here. I'm going to be leaving shortly. He said, let me come over here, and I want to talk to you about something. So he came in, looked like about to cry, and we sat down and just chatted for a couple seconds or so, and he says, I've had to do the most difficult thing I've ever had to do since I've been in football. I had no idea what he was going to say. I've had to involve you in a trade. He said, and let me just tell you, this is the most difficult trade. I've never gone to a player's office or his home to tell him about this. It's always in my office. And he told me who it was and so forth. I said, listen, I clearly understand. When that came out, the people really were talking about burning down buildings and so forth. And I mean, the parking lots were full of people at that bank. They were threatening to go over and take the Cowboy office apart.
We all thought he was traded because he was an activist, and it was upsetting. It was really upsetting. That was galvanizing for a lot of the black players. If they could do that to Pettis, they could do, And so that was very upsetting.
The owner called me. I just want you to know that whenever you retire from football, you got a position with the Cowboys. I never look back on that with regret or anything else. We knew we were very close to winning the Super Bowl, and I know things like this have to happen in life and so forth. And so I've never held that. We always had a great relationship. I had no bitterness at all.